Mr. Speaker, in his outstanding State of the Union address earlier this month, President Joe Biden presented Democrats' visionary agenda to build a better America with lower health care costs for American families and with justice in all that we do. House Democrats have long led the charge to lower the cost of prescription drugs. So it's great pride that the Democratic House today will advance one of the pillars of this vision, capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month. And in doing so, we take another important step in the fight to bring down drug prices across the board for every American family. Thank you to the lead sponsors of this legislation who have been relentless, dissatisfied, and persistent in this fight, Congresswoman Angie Craig, Congressman Dan Kildee, and Congresswoman Lucy McBath of Georgia. And I salute the chairs of the committees of jurisdiction for helping steer this vital legislation to the floor. Chairman Frank Pallone of Energy and Commerce, Chairman Richie Neal of Ways and Means, and Chairman Bobby Scott of Education and Labor. Everyone knows that the cost of insulin, a life-saving drug that has been around for a century, is outrageous and out of control. That cost is outrageous and out of control. On average, Americans pay more than 10 times for insulin compared to what consumers around the world pay. Here in the United States, the price of insulin skyrocketed by 54% from 2014 to 2019. Meanwhile, Big Pharma is reaping record-breaking profits, producing insulin at about $10 a vial while charging families up to 30 times that amount. And this affordability crisis is taking a severe human toll. 1 in 4 Americans who rely on insulin have been forced to ration or skip their dose, a practice that can be dangerous and even deadly. And working parents and a family member on insulin are reporting higher levels of stress and anxiety, often forced to choose between paying their bills or protecting the health of a loved one. Indeed, across the country, as I've said on this floor before, I have seen grown men cry about how they cannot meet their family needs when it comes to prescription drugs. This crisis is a kitchen table issue for millions of families, and it is a medical, economic, and moral imperative that Congress take action. The Affordable Insulin Now Act not only requires Medicare and commercial users to cover life-saving insulin on their plans, but also caps the out-of-pocket cost for families at $35 per month. In doing so, we put more money back in the pockets of hardworking families and vulnerable seniors. This is crucial right now, as so many Americans struggle to keep up with the burdensome everyday cost. And of course, this has even been exacerbated with COVID, which has, in many instances, spread diabetes more. House Democrats proudly passed a cap on insulin's cost in the Build Back Better legislation last year. We already did this last year. And today, we again take this strong step toward healthy, lower cost for the people. To be clear, comprehensive reform is urgently needed to lift the crushing burden of prescription drug prices weighing on our families. Democrats will never relent, Mr. Speaker, until we realize our long-standing goal of lowering drug prices across the board. And we are continuing our fight to empower Medicare to negotiate for lower drug prices. We've been working on that for decades, and make these lower prices available to Americans with private insurance, too. We do so in honor of the late Chairman Elijah Cummings, the North Star of our Congress, and a relentless warrior for lower drug prices with the Lower Drug Cost Now Act. Mr. Speaker, as you know, this rule applies not just to lowering the cost of insulin, but also to the very important MORE Act. I rise today in support of this urgent legislation that will help pave the path toward racial and economic justice. Thank you, Chairman Jerry Nadler, for being steadfast voice for equity and opportunity for all at the helm of the Judiciary Committee. Let us salute Congressman Ed Perlmutter for your tireless and long-standing leadership on this issue. Relentless, persistent, dissatisfied, would you say? Thank heavens we're passing it today. I also want to commend Congresswoman Barbara Lee and Congressman Earl Blumenauer for their persistence as well. For far too long, Mr. Speaker, failed federal drug policies have torn apart families and devastated communities of color. People of color are 4 times more likely to be arrested on cannabis charges and are often targeted for longer prison terms than others. Tragically, the communities most harmed by criminalization are benefiting the least from legal cannabis marketplace, as prior cannabis convictions are barring too many of them from entering the industry. As a result, only 1/5 of cannabis businesses are minority-owned, and only 4% of owners are Black. Meanwhile, more than 600,000 Americans are still arrested each year on cannabis charges, threatening to perpetuate this vicious cycle. With the MORE Act, which the Democratic House proudly passed last Congress, we take strong actions to correct these injustices. This landmark legislation is one of the most important criminal justice reform bills in recent history, delivering justice for those harmed by the brutal, unfair consequences of criminalization, opening the doors of opportunity for all to participate in this rapidly growing industry, and decriminalizing cannabis at the federal level so we do not repeat the grave mistakes of our past. Those of us from California take pride in our state's long leadership in this justice effort, and in recent years, 46 more states have reformed cannabis laws, as the distinguished gentleman from Colorado mentioned in his remarks. 47 states have taken this act. Now it is time for the federal government to follow suit. Both of the bills that the House will pass today that are covered by this rule, the insulin bill and this MORE Act, are overwhelmingly popular with the American people, and they represent strong steps toward building a brighter, fairer future for our children. With that, I urge strong bipartisan yes votes on both bills